Welcome to the podcast, Use Your Powers for Good. I'm your host, Carolyn Ofer-Moselle, and I'm so glad that you're here. This is a podcast to inspire leaders, managers, and supervisors to use your powers for good and put more kindness into the world. Today's guest is Lewis Flax. Lewis is hired by associations and nonprofits whose revenue is down. What they want is innovative, creative new ways to generate income so they can grow and thrive. You can learn more about his firm, Flax Associates, at www.flaxassociates.com. Lewis is going to talk to us today, talk to our nonprofit community today, and other leaders who will be able to use the information as well, on how to use your story to impact, influence, and persuade. Welcome, Lewis. We are so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Carolyn. It is a pleasure to be here today.
So tell us about your work and who you help and how you help them.
Sure. Work with nonprofits so they can be more impactful, influential, and to be persuasive. And I do that through a number of ways. And one way is to teach or work with them on how to be more impactful. And when I say that, Carolyn, I'd like you to think about either a TV show or a movie that really stands out, that you really enjoy, that you really like.
Let's the Brady Bunch. I know that is so old school, but that was like my favorite show. And even, I've always watched the ones that when they're older and everything. So I'll go with the Brady Bunch. That was my happy place.
There we go. The happy place. It was the Brady Bunch, not the Partridge Family. And I do, Carolyn, I do remember that. Friday nights, that was my must-watch TV as well. So at the beginning of a Brady Bunch episode, I know they look like Zoom boxes today, but we'd see the different families, and they were in their different boxes. So what stood out about the beginning of the show?
I loved how like the two families came together and created a unit of one. And how they had family disputes, but they always seemed to work together to work it out for the good of the whole family.
All right. And is there any incident or any situation that stands out in terms of at the beginning of the episode or one of the episodes?
I recall an episode where, and I always go back to to Marsha. And, I'm sure everybody remembers the whole Marsha. But I always go back to Marsha because I remember the incident when she got hit in the nose with a football her brothers were playing. And how like devastated she was because, as a teenager, your appearance is like your world. So she was really devastated. But the beginning of that episode, it was just, the boys being boys and, just playing, having an innocent game of football in the backyard. And she came out to say something to them and the football hit her in the nose.
Yeah. So what happened in the beginning of that episode was there was action, there was drama. And they probably didn't tell you all the facts. They probably didn't tell you all of the details. Maybe the football hit her in the nose and you wondered who threw it. Or the football hit her in the nose and maybe you didn't know, was she really hurt? Was she not hurt? Is that true?
That's true until like later you saw like her nose was really big and bruised.
Right. So when the TV show or theater production or a movie, when it starts, in order for them to grab our attention, they don't tell us all of the details. They leave things out, and they leave things out intentionally. And when leaders communicate, and here in my world, it's working with nonprofits, and it also applies to businesses, when they start to tell a situation, they start to share background, often, what is it they say? They say, well, the organization was started in 1954. Right? Or wait, let me tell you about our programs. And then they start to tell you about their programs. And then sometimes they'll even go further. Well, when I joined the organization, And wait a minute, well, before that, I did such and such. And then
Sure.
next in my career, and Carolyn, when we start to hear that, what happens?
We start to drift off because nobody probably cares about the next 10 seconds of that, maybe the first 5 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as you mentioned earlier, Marsha. Well, here it's boring.
Right.
Because once they start to discuss
Mhm.
their background or the information on their organization, the question is, well, how does that relate to me? How does that relate to us? Or why should we pay attention? So today we're going to focus on a method, one approach to use to make it more interesting.
Okay.
And we're going to borrow from either the movies or the TV shows. And the reality is, it doesn't matter whether it's a James Bond flick, whether it's Black Panther, whether it's When Harry Met Sally, or, you know, Star Wars. For any of these movies, whether it's the Brady Bunch, they all start that way. They all start that way, where they keep you off balance. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not sure where they're going to go next. All you see is action, or you see a situation that leaves you interested, yet also a little confused. And the recommendation in terms of this approach is, we're going to borrow from what the movies, the TV shows, and theaters, we're going to borrow from what they do. And the way we're going to do that is, we're first going to share an incident. Right? And when referencing an incident, here we're talking about something that occurred to us with someone else or with others. So the incident is personal. And then that incident should have happened or taken place within 24 hours. And the more personal, emotional, and impactful, the more our listeners are going to jump in and be interested. So we want to start off with an incident. We're not telling all the backstory. We're not giving all of the information away, which is typically what we would do.
Right.
And then after we share that incident, which should take no more than 2 or 3 minutes, then what's the point? Why are we telling them this story? Why are we sharing this with them? And the point should be very succinct and brief, at most 10 seconds, and 1 point, not 3 points. And then what action is it that we recommend that our listener or the person we're speaking to, what action do we recommend that they take? So we want to think about incident, point, action. And when we do that, we're going to be far more impactful and persuasive, and we're going to be better leaders. So in my work, often I deal with individuals and associations or other nonprofits, and either their board members or some folks that they work with, they may be hesitant about asking for funds. So when it comes to fundraising or asking for money, a lot of times people get queasy, they get uncomfortable. Yet if they can share an incident about how they felt related to, if it's a group that's looking to fight cancer or looking to prevent poverty, or if it's at an association and they're looking to convey the value, they can share a specific incident about a member or about sponsoring what they encountered. And then it's far easier to come to the point, right? And then the action. And the action could be asking for funds. The action could be to volunteer. The action could be to attend an event. So in my work, it's incident, point, action, tying it back into raising money. Yet for leaders, it doesn't have to be just about fundraising or sales. It can be about dealing with an individual at a specific meeting, on a podcast, in an e-newsletter. There are many areas of our life that we could use. So, Carolyn, we had talked about this briefly, and you mentioned that you had a situation that was a bit uncomfortable that you dealt with. So why don't you share that incident with us, and we'll walk through that.
This is awesome. I love that you have this process, and I think that people can use this, like you said, to attach to their leadership as they're going through the different situations that leaders face. So I had an incident of an employee who he had a body odor situation, and it was brought to my attention.
Probably not easy, yet something that as a leader, you need to deal with. So go
Yes.
ahead and jump into the incident. You're there. What occurred?
So it was brought to my attention. I went into his office and sat down and said, this this I need to talk to you about something that may feel a little uncomfortable, but I just want to let you know that I am here in a supportive way and not in a judgmental way. So I just want to bring this to your attention so that you can take an action. And
And what
so
did he say?
he was shocked that that was the case. That was his initial response, like, oh, like me? Like, what is this? And then he did say, well, he had been undergoing some medical procedures that may be the reason that is happening. So I told him that if he needed to take the rest of the day and go and address it, I just wanted him to not feel uncomfortable all day while he was at work. So I gave him permission to, just take a couple of hours, or the rest of the day was a late afternoon, to go and address it. And he was very appreciative of that.
Understand. And from that incident,
Mhm.
what point would you convey to either that individual or to us, those who are listening as leaders? What would the point be?
That as a leader, you are going to have uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable situations and conversations.
So the point is there will be uncomfortable situations.
Yes,
And then
definitely.
what action would you recommend that leaders take?
Addressing it immediately. A lot of times we like to just, because it's uncomfortable, not deal with it, hope it'll go away. But addressing it immediately is the action that I took and that I recommend.
Absolutely. So the action is to address it immediately.
Yes.
So let's come back, Carolyn, and we'll debrief what you covered.
Mm-hmm.
So during the incident, you covered just what happened when you walked into his office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, often people would share all of the different people who came to you, maybe other people in the office sending emails or discussing it. You kept all of that out.
Right.
You could have mentioned something that happened a few years back in the office that was somewhat similar.
Mm-hmm.
You kept it.
Mm-hmm.
You could have mentioned other issues you could have brought it up at a staff meeting. You didn't. What you did was you just talked about what occurred when you walked into his office.
Yes.
Now, Carolyn, when you state that, or if I shared that, or if anyone who's listening, if they shared that, can anyone refute that?
No, I mean, no. That my short answer is no. My more expanded answer is, a lot of times as leaders, we think addressing one person's situation is, when you said staff meeting, going into a staff meeting and making a general announcement, and hoping the person that it's directed to will hear it and do something.
Yeah, and here you addressed it head on.
Mm-hmm.
You addressed it with that individual.
Yes.
And for all of us who are listening, we can't refute that, because that's your story. That's your incident. That's what happened. And it was personal for you because you remember it. And I'm sure it was personal for him.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, when we're listening, and if you were speaking to someone else, to convey to them, to influence, to have them take action about the situation, maybe not related to body odor, but related to a difficult situation that they faced, they can't refute that.
Right.
And then you made the point, and then the action in very brief, concise way to address it, and to address uncomfortable situations, and then to address them immediately. And when using that approach or that formula of incident, then point, then action, it's very tough for people to refute that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're likely to be far more persuasive and influential,
Mm-hmm.
which is the reason why we're here. Because as leaders, that's what we want. And the easy way to deal with the situation that Carolyn described is to walk away from it, is to avoid it, is to not take action.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, as leaders, that's not what we want to do. we all want to make sure that we are stepping up, being proactive, and addressing situations that might fester, could get worse, or people will become demoralized or unsure. And then there's a vacuum or a lack of leadership.
Right.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and that person at the end of it all, as time went on, felt supported by me and felt, that I was going to have his back, because I came to him and took some immediate action, and addressed the problem immediately and helped him to take an action. And, there was no, public, public announcement in general about it, so that people could start saying in a staff meeting, well, who is it, or who is it? And in this case, it would have been somewhat obvious as to who it was. So I think at the end of it all, as a leader, that it was important for me to create that, create the bond that you create when you are managing people, and you are responsible for their success, as well as they're responsible for your success and the organization's success as a whole.
Absolutely. And this ties into associations of nonprofits, where they're looking for funds, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's major gifts, whatever they're looking for, they could be more impactful when they use this approach. And I coach and train many organizations on how to use this. It also applies to being more persuasive as a leader in many business settings, and even at home, in terms of persuading or influencing others to take action. So my suggestion is or the action that I recommend is for others to try incident point action to get better results.
Oh, this is awesome, Louis. And I think, like I said, I know that industry wide, across industries, this can be applied. And your focus, of course, is the nonprofit industry sector, but I know that, this can be applied across industries. And when you talked about fundraising, I know that fundraising, whether you are a board member or, the person responsible for raising funds, it's, no matter how confident you think you are, it's always feels like an uncomfortable situation. So I think that this approach helps put some perspective and content around your delivery of what, of your ask.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you for running and hosting a podcast that leaders need, because there's a lot of tips, guidance, suggestions that the situations that they face are often difficult, and there are often no right answers. So it's a question of having different approaches and ways to address.
Yes, I mean, I always say it's lonely at the top when you're being a leader, because you come into, like, who knew that I was going to come into a situation around like body odor, and and how that situation, although it's personal to someone, it also impacts the whole team, because it's a distraction, and and that's why it's important when you have these types of incidents, you address them immediately so that the person can take an action. So Louis, thank you so much for that. And I'm hoping that people will be able to maybe plug in a situation of their own so that they can use those 3 points to convey and to influence and persuade, and have a greater impact with their leadership. So tell me, Louis, can you give us your best leadership tip?
Well, I'm going to stick with what we covered. Want people to really give this a try and practice it, of using an incident and then following that up with a concise point, and then the action that they would like people to take.
Okay. Can you repeat that one more time for those who are writing it down?
Sure. Incident, point, action.
Got it. All right. Got that. Incident, point, action. So one more question for you, Louis. Tell us how you put more kindness into the world.
In my work with nonprofits and associations, many of them are struggling now during the pandemic and having difficulty. So in my work, I feel energized when I can work with them on a coaching or consulting basis to be able to raise more funds so that they can make an impact and they can make a difference.
Awesome. Awesome. So Louis, thank you so much for being here today. And so tell us how we can reach you if anyone's interested in working with you or learning more about your work.
Sure. Feel free to visit my website, www.flaxassociates.com, or email me at Lewis, Lewis, at flaxassociates.com.
Excellent. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank the audience so much for joining us today. And until next time, be better today than yesterday. Be better tomorrow than today. Bye for now.